I am pregnant, and my husband is overjoyed. He personally arranged a prenatal care doctor for me, and he accompanies me for each checkup. Everyone praises me for having married the right person, and I believe it myself, yet, in the end, the child I bore was his and his first love's. My son has been born for a month now, but I find myself increasingly feeling that he is not my child. I even feel as though I have never given birth. Because, except for the incision on my abdomen, I have none of the symptoms that other mothers in the maternity center have. I couldn't even squeeze out a drop of milk, and I have absolutely no maternal feelings for the child, as if I were rejecting him from the bottom of my heart. After more than 20 days of wandering aimlessly in my thoughts, I finally couldn't bear it and sought a comprehensive examination from an expert. The results came out, and the expert said to me in anger, "Do you take me for a joke? You say you're still in your postpartum period, but your test report shows you've never given birth." This news came as a bolt from the blue to me. What on earth is going on? My entire pregnancy was spent under my husband Shinyi's careful care. Just found out I'm pregnant, and he has already arranged a prenatal checkup doctor, and he will definitely accompany me to every checkup. All the examination reports were collected by him, as he said he didn't want me to be burdened at all. We clearly saw the baby's tiny hands and feet on the color Doppler ultrasound report. I'm eager to share this matter with my husband, but I can't get in touch with him at all. Since giving birth to our child, his attitude towards me has been completely different from when I was pregnant. In the past month, we haven't spoken more than 10 sentences. I've had a crazy thought in my heart. After returning to the maternity center, I plan to send my child's hair, along with mine and Shinyi's, for a paternity test. As expected, the child has no blood relation to me, but is the biological son of Shinyi. So, who is the mother of this child? What did Shinyi actually hide from me? My acquaintance with Shinyi originated from work. At 22, fresh out of college, my parents passed away in a car accident, leaving me with only a company. At that time, lacking practical experience, I heeded the advice of several uncles and hired a professional manager to help me manage the company, and that person was Shinyi. At that time, Shinyi was 30 years old, learned, capable, tall and handsome, and possessed the charm of a mature man. I saw him, and at first glance, I had a good feeling about him. Later on, it was proven that he is indeed a skilled hand at work. I learned beside him, and he was more than willing to teach me hands-on how to manage the company. Never having been in a romantic relationship before, I quickly fell deeply in love with him. Later, I mustered up the courage to confess my feelings to him, and we naturally progressed to being together, and soon got married. After marriage, Shinyi asked me to be a full-time housewife. Out of trust in him, I was more than willing to let him take the lead in his career at the company. Soon, he expressed his desire for a child, so I focused on trying to conceive at home. Finally, when he was 33 years old, I became pregnant. This child was incredibly hard for us to have. For the purpose of preparing for pregnancy, I had to get many injections. At the time, Shinyi was worried about me being too tired, so he would go to the hospital to pick up the medicine and then learn to give me the injections himself. At that moment, I was moved beyond words, feeling grateful for encountering this one-of-a-kind wonderful man in the world. Looking back, why did I experience symptoms of pregnancy without actually being pregnant? The problem might lie with those needles. Since I became pregnant, Shinyi has been much more attentive to me than before, and I always thought it was because of my pregnancy that we grew closer. Now, looking back, it's very likely that he accompanied me to every prenatal checkup because he was afraid I would discover the truth that I was never actually pregnant. Including the date of giving birth was also chosen by Shinyi, as I had a cesarean section, so after the anesthesia, I knew nothing at all. When I woke up, the child was already beside me, which was very likely because that woman gave birth on that day. I urgently wanted to know the truth, and my first instinct was to seek out my prenatal doctor, but I was informed that she had resigned and moved her family abroad a month ago. How coincidental. My guesses are being confirmed one by one, and I went to make copies of the medical records from back then. The medical record clearly states that I underwent a surgery to remove a hydatid mole, not a cesarean section. The expert, after reviewing the medical records, looked at me with sympathy. You must have been injected with an excessive amount of ovary-stimulating hormones, which led to the hydatidiform mole. This also explains why you experienced pregnancy symptoms. She paused before continuing, and the surgical records show that after the doctor cleared the hydatid mole from you, he also removed both of your fallopian tubes. I'm very sorry, but you will no longer be able to conceive. My head rang with a loud noise, and I couldn't hear any sounds. I had no idea how I left the hospital, and until I got back into the car, my entire body continued to tremble uncontrollably. Recalling the past with Shinyi, I couldn't help but collapse onto the steering wheel and sob out loud. Shinyi, we were together for 4 years, and I trusted you with all my heart. Why would you harm me to this extent? I frantically dialed Shinyi's phone, but there was no answer. At this moment, I gradually calmed down. Shani made me believe the child was my own, and what benefit does it bring him to prevent me from ever being pregnant again? He could very well live with his mistress and his illegitimate child, rather than separating the child from his biological mother as he does now. Unless, a shocking answer suddenly popped into my mind, he wanted his child with someone else to be the sole heir to my company. He wants to seize my company. This thought sent a chill down my spine, and I immediately contacted an insider from my former company. As soon as the phone connected, her excited voice came through, "Boss, you finally contacted me. I couldn't find you anywhere. Do you know that the company has changed hands?" Chapter 3. My heart sank heavily as the company had indeed run into trouble. It turned out that since I no longer interfered with the company's affairs, Shani had fired the 4 uncles who had fought side by side with my father in the past. Initially, it was these uncles who suggested that I hire Shani, and the people who originally followed me were basically fired. Even those who remained were all assigned to marginal positions, and the important positions have all been replaced with Shani's own loyalists. I checked my phone and found out that the phone numbers of former employees had all been blocked by Shani. That's why I never received any calls from them. And since I started trying to conceive, I have rarely gone out, and whenever I do, it's always with Shani. Therefore, Shani has turned away everyone who came looking for me. At this moment, my chest is boiling like a pot of water, my heart ablaze, my temples thumping. Shani really is cunning. Fortunately, Shani is unaware that I have uncovered the truth, and I am in the driver's seat. In the afternoon, I paid individual visits to several uncles, sincerely apologized to them, and earnestly requested their return to the company to help me defeat Shani and save the company. They are all my sincere elders, and upon learning about the troubles I have encountered, they all became extremely angry. A vast web targeting Shani is being slowly unfurled. Returning to the maternity center at night, Shani finally called me back, his tone cold. "What do you want by calling me so many times?" I suppressed my anger and feigned a coquettish tone. "I miss you so much. Would you please bring me and our son home? I don't want to stay here anymore." Shani was silent for a quarter of an hour and then agreed, which surprised me greatly. On the day we returned from the maternity center, Shani did not come in person, but only sent his driver and to pick us up. By the time we arrived home, Shani was bending over and speaking into the ear of a woman I did not recognize, causing the woman to laugh continuously. Hearing the sound of our entry, the woman was so scared that she jumped away from Shani. I squinted to examine her. Her fair and delicate appearance, slightly puffy, and her timorous expression was almost endearing. I can't figure out why, but I always feel like I've seen her before, even though I'm certain I haven't met her. However, from the way she was interacting with Shani just now, it's clear they have a special relationship. I stepped forward and took hold of Shani's arm, looking at the woman and saying, "Husband, this is?" The woman's eyes darkened. Shani immediately pulled his arm away from mine, putting some distance between us. "This is Bai Ying, the babysitter I've hired for our baby. From now on, all matters concerning the baby will be handled by her. You just need to take good care of yourself and rest." He then turned to Bai Ying and introduced me. "Bai Ying, this is Ji Xiaoxiao, that is, the mother of the baby." I could sense his subtle pause on the words mom, as Bai Ying had already run to the child's side, carefully holding him in her arms, her eyes brimming with tears. I looked at her and then at the child, suddenly realizing why she seemed so familiar. The child was strikingly similar to her in 7 out of 10 features. Could she be the child's biological mother? I couldn't help but burst into anger. Shani dared to be so brazen, openly bringing someone into our home. I didn't want to bother them, so I told Shani, "I'm tired," and went back to my room by myself. Shani didn't seem to mind. Instead, he played with the child together with Bai Ying, creating a picture of a happy family of 3. Shani really doesn't hold me in any regard at all. Thinking it over, I dialed my best friend Yi Xian's phone. The phone rang, and Yi Xinyang's cheerful voice came through. "Xiao Xiao, why are you calling me at this time? Do you miss me?" Hearing her voice, a sense of injustice surged up within me. I suppressed this emotion and said seriously, Xian, does your brother own a detective agency? I want him to help me look for someone." Maybe sensing the seriousness in my tone, Yi Xian's voice also carried a hint of tension. "Is something wrong?" It's a serious matter. Let's discuss it when we meet." Just as I hung up the phone, I heard my mother-in-law's surprised voice from the living room. "Bai Ying, how did you get here?" "Mom, Xiaoying will be staying with us from now on, which will be convenient for taking care of the child," Shani answered for Bai Ying. "Shani, are you crazy?" If Xiao Xiao finds out, the grandmother clearly lowered her voice, and I couldn't hear the rest of what she said. But the facts are already clear. The mother-in-law is aware of it, and this whole family is colluding to plot against me here. With a calculation in mind, I opened the bedroom door, feigning surprise. "Mom, how did you get here?" The grandmother trembled slightly, turned around, and looked at me with a hint of guilt. "Xiao Xiao, you're home. Mom specially made soup for you and brought it over. Hurry up and drink it while it's hot." "Thank you, Mom," I smiled at my mother-in-law. "By the way, this is the babysitter, Aunt Bai, whom my husband hired. Please, I ask you to explain our family's rules to her, especially to let her know that she should never do anything that might make the master of the house unhappy. I glanced at Bai Ying, and her face turned pale instantly. Don't rush, let's take our time. Yi Xing's brother moved quickly. On the third day, Yi Xing invited me to meet, bringing along her brother, Yi Chen. This Bai Ying has an unnatural relationship with your husband, she said, as Yi Chen placed a stack of documents in front of me. Bai Ying and Shen Yi can be said to be childhood sweethearts, having been classmates in junior and senior high school. They started dating as early as their first year in high school. The Gaokao English score was not satisfactory, only enough to qualify for a junior college in the city, while Shen Yi's score was sufficient to gain admission to Zhejiang University. Shen Yi wanted to give up Zhejiang University for Bai Ying and attend university in the city where Bai Ying lives, but after the grandmother found out, she threatened to die, and Shen Yi abandoned this idea. Both had been secretly maintaining their relationship in college, but Bai Ying, a devoted younger sister, voluntarily married an older man from another place after graduation to earn money for her younger brother. She received a substantial dowry, which led to the termination of her contact with Shen Yi. Shen Yi, unaware of the truth, searched for her frantically for several years until, just as Shen Yi had just confirmed our relationship with me, Bai Ying's husband passed away, and they were reunited once again. That is to say, when I fell in love and got married to Shen Yi, he had been with Bai Ying all along. That's why after we started dating, Shen Yi's attitude towards me suddenly became distant for a while. But why did he continue to be with me afterward? Bai Ying and I were pregnant at the same time, gave birth at the same time, and even had the same obstetrician for our prenatal checks. There's no doubt that she is the child's biological mother. And every time I see a medical report, it should be hers. Shen Yi even paid to start a company for Bai Ying's younger brother. Bai Ying's younger brother is a ne'er-do-well, lounging around all day and constantly asking Bai Ying for money. Later, under the protection of Shen Yi, he became a middleman, purchasing products from my company at cost price and then reselling them. Yi Xing repeatedly questioned me about what had happened, and I tried to describe the situation to her in a lighthearted manner. Otherwise, Yi Xian's temper might just lead to murder. Shen Yi's motherfucker is just a scumbag. I'm going to go find them to settle accounts right now. Yi Xing was so angry that she was about to rush out to find Shen Yi, but Yi Chen pulled her back onto the sofa. Yi Xing, don't mess things up. I think Xiao Xiao should have already made a plan. I gratefully glanced at Yi Chen. Yes, I have a plan, Xin, rest assured, I will not let him off. I still have many things that require your help. I had Yi Chen install hidden cameras in every corner of my home. Since Shen Yi has brought people right in front of me, there's no reason for me not to seize the opportunity. In the following month, I hired another babysitter, and at first, Shen Yi was not pleased and asked me why I needed to hire an extra maid. I looked at him with an innocent expression. I noticed Aunt Bai seemed a bit unwell, so I thought I'd ask for an extra helper to ease her burden. After all, our family isn't short on money. Shen Yi pondered for a moment after hearing this, nodded deeply in agreement, and continually praised me for my thorough thinking, while Bai Ying's expression grew increasingly ugly. I deliberately act affectionate in front of her with the children during the day, and as soon as she gets close, another babysitter will take the child away. And every evening after Shen Yi returns home from work, I constantly pester him, leaving him with no chance to spend time with Bai Ying. I deliberately showed affection in front of Bai Ying and Shen Yi, and I could feel Bai Ying's hate-filled gaze burning into my back. Yes, that's the way it is. Hurry up and erupt. Several times at night after everyone has fallen asleep, Shen Yi wanted to go find Bai Ying but was held back by me and couldn't go through. 1 month later, Bai Ying could no longer contain herself. That night, Shen Yi sneaked out of bed while I was asleep and went to Bai Ying's room again. This time, I deliberately did not call him back, and as soon as he left, I turned on the surveillance video. In the video, Bai Ying is held in Shen Yi's arms, crying like a willow blossom in the rain. As she cries, she's to Shen Yi, "This Ji Xiao Xiao is too overbearing. She occupies our son during the day and you at night. You and our son should clearly be mine. Don't you know how much I suffer?" Shen Yi comforted her with a look of deep concern. "Xiaoying, you know I don't love her at all. I only love you. You needn't care about her anymore. She has already taken our son as her own, and she can never have another child. Just bear with it a little longer, and once I've completely kicked her out of the company, alright? Try to get her to stay away from the house. I don't want to see her near my son. Alright, I'll figure something out. Don't cry, you make me ache when you do." They started talking and then began to gnaw at each other, and then something indecent happened. Watching the two pieces of flesh entwined together, I could only feel a sense of nausea. The long-held conjecture has finally been confirmed, and at this very moment, there is no longer any feeling of distress in my heart, only anger remains. Early the next morning, Shen Yi asked me, "Xiao Xiao, now that there's someone to take care of the child, you no longer have to stay at home every day. Is there anything you'd like to do?" I looked at Shen Yi with an innocent expression. "I think I'm also bored. Maybe I should go back to work at the company instead." "No way. Jeannie instinctively, and I caught a glimpse of Bai Ying constantly giving him discreet signals. In the end, Jeannie yielded. Alright, but the company has changed significantly lately, and I'm afraid you might not be able to adapt when you go back. I coaxed him, pouting. I haven't worked for so many years. Do you really think I want to go back to work? It's just that I want to kill some time. So, I smoothly returned to the company. Within the company, every day I would just wander around, occasionally complaining to Shani that the company is not fun and that I want to go out. And so another month passed, and Shani relaxed his vigilance over me, no longer watching me constantly. He didn't know that I was waiting for an opportunity. And this opportunity soon arrived. On this day, Shani was to attend a 10-day industry summit abroad. I coquettishly asked him to take me along, but he refused point blank. However, Bai Ying left the house at the same time as him. I'm crying buckets on the surface, but inside, I'm laughing heartily. The grand show I've been preparing for so long is about to begin. As Shani left, I swiftly took over the company, invited the 4 uncles back, and directly assumed control of the 4 core departments. I took office immediately, and my first task was to control Shani's loyalists to prevent them from sending secret messages, and then replace them all with my own people. We haven't been idle these past 2 months. The 4 uncles have gone house by house, individually hiring back the previous core employees with high salaries. And I'm not just loafing around at the company. I've got the current state of affairs here down to a T, and I've even paid individual visits to important clients and suppliers as the big boss. Merchants prioritize profit above all, and as long as there's money to be made, they never care who is in charge of the company. In just 5 days, the company smoothly completed the transition, with only one person left to resolve. I asked Yi Chen to send someone to find Bai Ying's brother to place a large order and pay the deposit in advance. This fellow has always been the type to collect the money first before obtaining the goods from Shani, and now that he thought he had a big deal, he happily took the deposit. Shani was not in the country, so he came to the company to look for the former purchasing department manager, only to find that someone else had taken over the position. The new manager completely ignored him and had him ejected immediately. That's when he panicked, wanting to contact Shani, but how could I give him that chance? Yi Chen's people blocked him directly, threatening that if he couldn't deliver the goods, he would have to pay triple the penalty for breach of contract, otherwise his life would be at risk. I'm not sure where Yi Chen found the person, but he had a tattoo of the left green dragon and the right white tiger on his body, which scared Bai Ying's younger brother so much that he emptied all his money and even borrowed tens of millions in high-interest loans. 10 days later, when Shani and Bai Ying returned home, I sat on the sofa and greeted them with a half-smile. You're finally back. They both gave me a startled look, quickly releasing each other's arms. I raised an eyebrow at them. Don't stop, keep holding hands, I don't mind. After all, I'm about to divorce Shani soon. Ji Xiaoxiao, what did you say? Shani was taken aback by my words. I stopped the smile on my face and stood up, facing Shani directly. I said, I want to divorce you. Ji Xiaoxiao, do you even know what you're saying? Shani lowered his voice. Of course, I do. I also know that you and she have a lovely son. I pointed my finger at Bai Ying, and Xin Yi's expression froze. Bai Ying, on the other hand, suddenly felt her legs go weak and she fell to the ground. Shani, why is this? We've been together for 4 years. Why do you have to treat me like this? Why do you have to take away my chance to be a mother? Thinking about these things, I couldn't control my emotions, and I involuntarily raised my voice. Xin Yi's face turned a shade of blue and purple, but quickly returned to normal. Since you already know, there's nothing left for me to hide. Before I married you, I was with Xiaoying. If it weren't for you threatening my mother, I wouldn't have wanted to marry you at all. But even if I marry you, I will not let you have a child of mine. My child can only be born by Xiaoying. And I want our 2 children to inherit your company, while you, from now on, can never have any more children. I didn't quite catch up. Did I threaten her mother? Do you want a divorce from me? Now, your company is entirely under my control. Alright, then, you can leave with nothing. Shani laughed boisterously. Ha ha ha. I let out a cold laugh, lowered my eyelids, and no longer looked at him. If I were you, I would first go back to the company and see about it. Xin Yi's expression turned stern, as if he had sensed something amiss. He picked up his phone, dialed several numbers, and finally got through. Anxious, he asked, what has happened at the company? I don't know what the other person said, but Xin Yi's face grew increasingly dark. After hanging up the phone, Xin Yi's expression was one of deep resentment. Ji Xiaoxiao, you cunning bitch. I shrug. When it comes to cunning, I can't hold a candle to you. Speaking of which, I have to thank you. After all these methods I know are taught by you. Xin Yi was so angry that he wanted to lay hands on me, but Yi Chen, who had been hiding in the bedroom, rushed out and kicked him away with a single kick. I stepped forward and forcefully pressed his right hand under my feet, my voice cold and severe. Regarding the divorce, you have 5 days to consider it. I said that and left. I had already delivered the child to the mother of Shani. Let them stay in this house temporarily. I have kept some good things for them. 5 days should be enough. After I left, Shani went to the company and was undoubtedly kicked out. He went back to find his former good customers, but to no avail. No one paid any attention to him. As the saying goes, the winner takes all and the loser takes nothing. This world is just that realistic. As he arrived home with a fierce demeanor, Bai Ying's younger brother showed up at the door again, clutching Xinyi's leg and crying with a nose full of snot, detailing to Shani everything that had happened to him. In the surveillance video, it can be seen that Shani is so angry that his veins are popping out. He kicks Bai Ying's younger brother away with a kick. Useless thing. Can't you even think about it with such an obvious trap? Bai Ying hurried forward to help her younger brother up, tears streaming down her face as she shouted at Shani. Don't just blame him. It's Ji Xiaoxiao who deliberately wants to make trouble for him. What should we do now? Shani clenched his teeth and said, Ji Xiaoxiao, she wants a divorce, but it won't be that easy. Despite his anger, in the end, Shani paid out of his own pocket to fill the hole for Bai Ying's younger brother, which left him severely injured. He truly has a deep love for Bai Ying, and as a result, Bai Ying treated him with even more tenderness and care. For the next 5 days, they both stayed at home without stepping out. In the surveillance video, Shani behaves like a, ceaselessly dragging Bai Ying onto the bed. Bai Ying is exhausted from his relentless efforts, suffering from all of her injuries, and her lower body is drenched in blood every day. After being overwhelmed once again and passing out, Bai Ying hid in the bathroom and chose to call the police. During the half-hour wait for the police, Shani, outside the bathroom door, was in excruciating pain, repeatedly hitting the door with his lower body. When the police arrived, Shani had already covered his lower body and was convulsing on the ground. Subsequently, both Shani and Bai Ying were sent to the hospital. Bai Ying was diagnosed with permanent lower body injury, while Xinyi's lower body was broken directly due to the violent impact. When Yichen told me this message, it was exactly on the 5th day. I clapped my hands. It can be wrapped up. I filed a lawsuit against Shani in court, accusing him of bodily harm and fraudulent marriage. I submitted surveillance footage and my medical records. The court ruled that Xinyi's act of fraudulently marrying was substantiated, and granted the divorce. All income during the marriage is to be solely mine. The case of intentional injury requires further investigation. Xinyi was permitted bail pending trial due to his injuries. Subsequently, the company issued a statement. Mr. Xinyi, the former general manager, was dismissed and will never be rehired due to embezzling company funds and severely damaging the company's interests. The industry was in an uproar, and it had to be admitted that Xinyi was indeed young and talented. His marriage to me had also become a celebrated story. Now that this statement has been released, companies in the industry have all expressed their positions, stating that they will never hire Shani in the future. In no time, Shani became the pariah, everyone shouting for his downfall. After the judgment was announced, I went to the hospital myself and gave the judgment document to Shani. He looked withered at this moment, no longer the vibrant figure he once was. His eyes were devoid of spirit as he gazed at me. How did you know? My own body is the one I understand best, and whether or not I have given birth, I can feel it myself. Shani, I used to hide my shortcomings in front of you out of love, but I am not truly foolish. You should not take advantage of my love for you to confront me. I'm here today to ask you, you said I threatened your mother. What exactly happened? Ji Xiaoxiao, you're still playing dumb up to now. Wasn't it you who told my mother that if I didn't marry you, I would be disgraced? If it wasn't you, how could I have ended up like this today? Originally, Su Jiaoshu, Xingyi's mother, is the real culprit behind my current suffering. I looked at him coldly. Shani, it's not me who has brought you to this state, but your mother. Not wanting to any further, I was about to turn around and leave when I suddenly remembered that I had forgotten to ask Shani a question. Right, I almost forgot to ask you, have you and Bai Ying been having a good time these days? Shani suddenly looked up, his eyes blazing with a terrifying light. It's you. It's me, and I boldly admit it. I've added a little something to the water purifier at home, and it seems to be working quite well. Shani struggled to get up to hit me. Don't move, or else the connection that Wazer established will break again. I gave a glance at his lower body, and Xinyi's face turned a deep purple instantaneously. You also can't tell me. The water purifier should have been cleaned by now. Ji Xiaoxiao, you poisonous woman. I no longer continued to speak with him, turned and left the ward, leaving behind only Xinyi's painful cries. Just when I thought life was returning to normal, some people always seem to come along and stir up trouble. After meeting Shani, on the 3rd day, as I arrived at the company, Su Jiaoshu blocked my path. My former mother-in-law grabbed my leg and acted like a shrew, begging me not to sue her son. Very good, I haven't gone to find her yet, and she came to me instead. I had someone bring her to my office, as I had something important to discuss with her. You say not to tell your son, but why? I get straight to the point. Xiao, you and Shani were married for a while after all. His affair with that woman was just a fleeting act, and he still loves you the most. Oh? Do you know who fathered your grandson? Also, I've heard that I threatened you to make sure that Shani marries me. When did I threaten you? Su Jiuxiu's face turned pale, her lips trembling, unable to find words. So, what gives you the right to ask me not to report your son? Su Jiuxiu fell to her knees before me. All of this is my fault. It was me who initially disagreed with Shani and that Baiying, so I used you as a shield to deceive him. What is that Baiying to you? You're beautiful and capable. It would be the best for Shani to marry you. I thought that once you were married, he would have ended his relationship with Baiying. Who knew that Shani was bewitched by the devil? When I found out that he was still with Baiying again, and Baiying was already pregnant, after all, that was my own grandson, I could only turn a blind eye and a deaf ear. After the child was born, I realized that Shani was actually so daring to make you pretend to be pregnant and take Baiying's child to you as if it were your own. Please, Shani made a mistake, but you also divorced him. You haven't suffered any real harm, so please let him off. As she spoke, Su Jiuxiu moved closer to my feet, trying once again to embrace my leg. I kicked her away, and my voice was cold and terrifying. If I tell you that your son had my fallopian tubes removed, leaving me unable to ever become a mother, do you still think I haven't suffered real harm? Su Jiuxiu stood there dumbfounded, clearly unaware of this matter. Su Jiuxiu, I tell you, I will never let you and your son go. I want your entire family to live in constant pain for the rest of your lives. I have resolved the doubts in my heart, and there's nothing more to discuss with her, so I called the security guards to have her removed. Ji Xiaoxiao, I will not give up. I will come to see you every day, and I will make your company unable to operate. Su Jiaoxiu shouted and was dragged away. I thought Su Jiaoxiu had already left, but to my surprise, just as I was leaving the company gate after work, I saw her standing across the street like a ghost, staring at me. I felt extremely disgusted and didn't want to entangle with her, so I turned around to re-enter the company. Seeing that I wanted to leave, she charged at me like a leopard. At that very moment, a speeding car came flying by, brushing against me and crashing heavily into Su Xiaoxiu. She was knocked off the ground, soaring 3 feet into the air, and after staying in midair for a moment, she landed heavily on the ground. Blood flowed like a river instantly. I was so frightened by the scene that I stood still, frozen in place. If it weren't for me turning around just in time, that car would have hit me. The scene was in chaos, with the sound of brakes, screams, and people calling the police. A heart-wrenching cry of "Mom" finally pulled me back to reality. A person got out of the car, running 2 steps for every 3, and rushed to Su Xiaoxiu's side, embracing her in his arms and crying out loudly, "Mom." I finally realized, this person is Shani. So his target was supposed to be me all along. He actually wanted to run me over with his car. I was filled with a sense of fear, and dared not approach any further, instead turning back to the company to wait for news. Soon, the police and an ambulance arrived, taking Su Xiaoxiu to the hospital, while Shani was arrested. I dared to step out then, recounting the situation of the incident to the police. "Ji Xiaoxiao, it's all because of you, this slut, that my mother died." The look in Xingyi's eyes was as if it would burst into flames, struggling to charge at me. "Don't move." The police officer barked, pinning him to the ground, unable to move. As a party involved, I accompanied the police car to the Public Security Bureau for a statement. I only learned from the police's account that I truly had dodged death. Shani, in order to seek revenge on me, had been waiting outside my company building since early morning. At that moment, as I stepped out of the company gate, he drove his car straight towards me. It was only because I saw Su Xiaoxiu trying to avoid her that I turned around. That turn saved my life, but not so for Su Xiaoxiu, who was too fast in her rush towards me. She collided with the car, suffering a severe blow to her head and multiple fractures in her bones. Although she was saved, she will spend the rest of her life paralyzed in bed. I heaved a sigh of relief. Perhaps this was truly justice for the wicked. Yi Xing and Yi Chen arrived together at the police station to pick me up. Yi Xian was so scared that her face turned pale and her lips went white. When she saw me, she grabbed me and cried out loud. I comforted her while thanking Yi Chen. "Big brother, I'm truly sorry. It's so inconvenient for you to make this trip." Yi Chen watched his sister with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "When I heard the news that you almost got hit, this silly girl was terrified. She trembled so violently that she couldn't even walk, so I came with her." "Are you okay?" "Nothing, I'm lucky. I won't die." "Don't say that word, die." Yi Xian's pale little face turned even paler. I and Yi Chen looked at each other helplessly and smiled. As my life gradually returned to normal, every day, I work, read, exercise, go shopping, and travel. My schedule is packed. I don't want to inquire about the situation of Shani and his family anymore. Instead, it's that gossip girl, Yi Xian, who keeps urging her brother to gather information. Shani was sentenced to 20 years in prison for intentional injury, and Su Jiaoxiu became paralyzed and bedridden. Since Shani was incarcerated and no one was there to take care of her, the Civil Affairs Department sent her to a nursing home. But because she has no children, no money, and is also a troublesome paralyzed patient, the nursing staff at the nursing home are not very attentive to her. She developed bed sores shortly after moving into the nursing home, as I had predicted, living in constant pain every day. After Bying was discharged from the hospital, she left Sea City and abandoned her child. This is because she suffered permanent damage to her lower body, making it difficult for her to move around, and she couldn't find a suitable job, so she could only live day by day. As for that child, the community has contacted me to inquire whether I would be willing to adopt him. I admit, the child is indeed pitiful, but I am not a saint. His parents have caused me such great harm that I cannot forgive and adopt him without resentment. At most, I can only manage not to take it out on him. I have seriously considered it, and even if I cannot have my own children in the future, I can still live a wonderful life on my own. So, I rejected the community staff members. After suffering so much, I have matured as well, and I no longer have any illusions about this thing called love. I travel everywhere, exploring the world, immersing myself in diverse cultures and customs. My spiritual world is constantly being enriched. Maybe one day my mindset will change. Maybe one day I will truly meet my soulmate, but these are all things for the future, aren't they?